Hey guys, it's Trent Dressel here. If you've ever been in sales, you probably know how frustrating it can be when prospects suddenly disappear into thin air. It's called being ghosted. I would know what it feels like. It's happened to me many times in my sales career. I learned how to mitigate it, and by doing so, it allowed me to increase my income from $50,000 to $302,000 of W-2 income by age 26. In today's video, I will be sharing 7 battle-tested ways to help you get a response every time and avoid being ghosted. Let's get started. Strategy number 1 is to be professionally persistent. When you've been following up with a prospect, when you know you need to close this deal to hit quota to avoid being put on a performance improvement plan, you really want to see an email come through with the prospect saying, let's set up a meeting. Yeah, I'm ready to buy from you. When you don't get that, you start to feel uncertain. It's like standing on a mountain you can't see in front of you. It's the abyss and you want to give up. The difference between a rookie and someone who doesn't make it and a true professional is a professional always follows up until they're either blatantly rejected and told no, or they win the deal. I identified a credit union in my book of business as an account executive that I thought could spend a lot of money with me. I started calling the VP and I was lucky to get him on the phone early. He agreed to a meeting. I was on that Zoom meeting that afternoon and he never showed up. From that moment forward, my mission was to get his attention and set the meeting back up. It required 46 calls to him. I even called a member of his team 36 times. She agreed to a meeting and also no-showed me. I eventually got him back on the phone. He brought his director on the call. That was a really cool feeling. And that persistence over 2 years resulted in them purchasing a $60,000 3-year license of my software solution. Be professionally persistent and continue to follow up. Use the belief that you are there to help. You are there to help solve problems for their business, to make them more successful. Use that as justification to continue to follow up. Strategy number 2 to always get a response is to use the magic email subject line. Simply ask them, are you ghosting me? Ghost emoji, question mark. While I cannot guarantee you'll get a response with this subject line, I think it's funny and the prospect will chuckle a little bit. The actual magical email subject line that I have used hundreds of times that has probably a 90% response rate is, have you given up on this project? Question mark. I learned this subject line from Chris Voss. He's the FBI negotiator. He wrote Never Split the Difference. Really useful for salespeople, so I would recommend the book. And he talks about this subject line basically playing into the psychology of the other person needing to justify their position of loss aversion, of not quitting, of not being a failure. So even if they don't want to get back to you, they will want to respond to you to at least acknowledge that they are not a quitter. And this subject line is really useful if you've been working with a prospect for a few months and they just completely go cold for a few weeks, a few months. I always pull it out. Or if you're actively speaking with someone, but they're sort of dragging their feet, use this subject line as a way to help them break up with you. And it can be a really useful way to stop wasting your time on a prospect that's not actually qualified to buy. Strategy number 3 is to offer value in every interaction. A low-level rep will send an email. I've done this before. I've seen it. I don't do it anymore. They'll send an email and then they'll reply on that existing thread and they'll say, thoughts? Question mark. Or they'll reply, and I get this in my LinkedIn DMs all the time. They'll say, did you see my previous note? Question mark. Of course we saw your previous note, but we're deciding not to respond because you did not offer enough value in the initial note and your follow-up is not persistent. Therefore, you will be ghosted for the rest of eternity. In order to break out, to get a response, you need to offer value in every interaction. Put yourself in the prospect's shoes for a minute and ask yourself, how does this message from Trent actually help me? Has he researched my company news to see this alert that we're now merging with another company? PGA Live? Okay, I think that's an update worthy of bringing to their attention to share how your solution will then help them. Always think about, how can I drive a compelling reason for them to actually want to show up? This requires a little bit of thought. If you go to the gym and do a half bench press, a half squat, it's easier, but you're not gonna see results. If you send thoughts, question mark, doesn't require much thought, but you know you're probably not gonna get a very thoughtful response, if ever a response from your prospect. So always be asking yourself, how can I deliver value in every single interaction from the initial prospecting to trying to close the deal? So far, we have covered being professionally persistent, the magic email subject line, and offering value in every interaction. If you have found value so far in this video, before we cover the next 4 ways to get responses, smash the like button right now. The 4th way to always get a response from your prospects is to use multiple communication channels. When I went on a trip to Nepal to hike in the Himalayan mountains, it required a very long plane ride to Asia. I had to get in a car, I had to get in a bus, I had to hike many, many miles. It required multiple forms of travel to get to this exotic destination. In order to win your big exotic deals, get pipeline, generate revenue, get the fat commission checks, go to President's Club in the exotic locations, you need to use multiple channels of communication. They call it omni-channel. So most reps are sitting comfortably behind their email screens, typing away, hoping to get a response, refreshing the inbox, getting distracted by Slack, being ghosted forever. Call the prospect, show up at their office, whatever it takes. The prospect blocks your email, fine, send them a LinkedIn note. They block you on LinkedIn, fine, give them a phone call. If that doesn't work, okay, you're gonna have to start getting creative. Send them a carrier pigeon. Whatever it takes to get their attention, multiple communication channels is the answer. The 5th way of 7 to always get a response is to show up bearing gifts. I was working a 6-figure deal with a large retailer. I thought we were very close to the finish line, but I was just not getting responses from the VP. So I was sitting there in the office brainstorming, thinking, how can I get their attention? I looked it up and I was like, their office is 20 minutes away. So what I did was I went to our swag closet and I put together a little gift box, and I thought, I'm gonna show up in person and say, what's up? I'm gonna show up bearing gifts, okay? Law of reciprocity. So I show up to the office, and the door lady, basically the receptionist, immediately writes me off. I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I did not anticipate I would show up bearing gifts that day, okay? And I'm like, hey, I'm here to see XYZ name. And the receptionist says, not available. I'm like, you know what? I really put a lot of thought into this gift and we're working this deal. Can I just show up and drop it off at her office? No big deal. She's like, no, you can leave it over there on the lunch bin where lunches are dropped off at. So I left it there. Okay, I took a picture, and as I was leaving the building, I took another picture, and I sent an email immediately saying, hey, I wasn't able to reach you today, but I think you'll really love the candle, the gifts in here, da-da-da. Not even asking for her to take my next meeting because she'd ghosted me the last like 5 emails. Instant response, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And that warmed her up to say, you know what, this person isn't just totally transactional. They show up bearing gifts. Okay, cool. The 6th way to always get a response to avoid being ghosted is to multi-thread your communications. So this is different from multiple communication channels. What I mean by multi-thread is when you're targeting your account, you are most likely doing a bottoms up strategy or a tops down. Bottoms up is working with lower level managers, directors, and then a top down is working with VP, C-levels, the economic decision maker, the important people. So wherever you're at in the organization, if you are working with a lower level person, you need to recognize that you will eventually need to up level the conversation. So what I would recommend doing is attempting to get your person who may be ignoring you to introduce you to one of their leaders or someone that's higher up in the organization. And then when you finally do get access to that person, you want to bring in someone from your team who is on an appropriate level. So if you're a low-level sales rep like I was, you want to bring in your VP to meet with their VP so that the VPs build some rapport, so that when the little director that you're emailing isn't replying to you, you then bring in your VP to email that VP with that director CC'd on it to help unrestrict the communication flow. Multi-threading, working with champions, this is a nuanced topic, but one of the most important things you can do when you start to have multiple stakeholders in the organization, because if you have those relationships and your person's not responding, okay, let me just call their boss and see if we can get things going. Oh, this person's been lazy. They're too busy playing fantasy football, whatever it may be. So multi-thread, and I promise you, it will unlock wonders. The 7th and final way to get unstuck and get the response is simply to give up. If you're working with someone, if you put in so much time to it, but they are just not reciprocating, they're not getting back to you, they're probably not qualified to buy, they probably don't want to buy, they probably haven't seen enough value throughout your presentations. Not all customers are created equally. So if you're just working so hard and you've deployed all these 6 ways we've talked about, being professionally persistent, using the magic email subject line, delivering value in every interaction, multiple channels of communication, showing up bearing gifts, and multi-thread. If none of that is working, just move on. It's not a big deal to have worked a deal, you lost it, your win rate's probably gonna be 15% anyway, so stop wasting your time, move on, and find the next prospect that will inevitably ghost you. Never underestimate a prospect's ability to disappoint you. Believe me, I learned firsthand. If you enjoyed today's video, I certainly hope you did. I wanted to let you know right now that I am building my new podcast channel publicly, Trent Dressel Podcast. My mission is to interview the top sales creators, influencers across LinkedIn, YouTube, business leaders, and just generally people I find interesting. So I need you to do two things for me if you'd like to help support, and it really would mean a lot to me. First and foremost, go subscribe to Trent Dressel Podcast YouTube channel. It's linked in the description below. Episode 1 is live now. Go subscribe. And then secondly, comment down below, who would you like to see me interview? I want to interview Patrick Dang because he's a big dog from a tech sales on YouTube standpoint, and I have a long list of other people I want to interview. So do let me know in the comments who you'd like to see me interview. Thank you so much for watching here today. Happy selling.